Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only the best. I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one. Working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah, fatal like a gun. Shooters gonna shoot and I'm gonna shoot until I fall, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only the best. I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
Hey everyone. Okay, so we're gonna try this again. Thanks for coming back. As Kay Bray said, technology sucks sometimes, or you hate technology sometimes. So I did get a new battery for my wireless mouse, so that is all taken care of. And I found the prosecution and defense opening statements on a different news station. So I'm going to attempt to play those again, but I will stop it more frequently, which again, to me is a little annoying because you want to hear the content of what's being said, but to be in accordance with fair use, I will pause it more often. What's interesting is when I went into Studio to check the copyright issues, YouTube actually said that no copyright issues were found in my video. Well, then why did your bot say there was? So I'm just going to try to pause more often, and hopefully that will get things where they need to be. So I'm going to start by reading an article just because this gives an idea to what the defense says with what happened. So this is from the Times-Union, and it says, attorney calls driveway shooting of Kaylin Gillis a, quote, terrible accident. Kevin Monahan faces 25 years to life in prison if convicted of second-degree murder. And so then there is Mr. Monahan there. And here is the defense attorney. His name is Arthur Frost. And that's it. Oh, nope, they've got one more. The judge. And again, the defense attorney. Another photo of Mr. Monahan. Here is the prosecution on the left, defense on the right. So again, this is in Fort Edward. The attorney for Kevin Monahan told the Washington County jury Thursday that his, quote, old man client fatally shot 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis by accident on April 15th using a defective shotgun while under the mistaken impression that the young woman and her friends were bikers threatening his rural home in Hebron. This was a terrible accident. Somebody should have realized that by now, Arthur Frost, the attorney for Monahan, said in his opening statement before County Judge Adam Michelini. The builder was in his home on a mountainside when, according to his attorney, he awoke to the sound of a rumbling motorcycle. Frost said his client, a professional motorcycle racer, worried that bikers and possible, quote, reinforcements were coming after him. The attorney said Monahan handed a revolver to his wife, Jinx, told her to hide in the closet, then walked outside to confront the would-be intruders. He said Monahan was armed with a 20-gauge shotgun that the lawyer contends will fire without the trigger being pulled. He promised jurors an expert witness would support that opinion. Frost, who repeatedly cast his 66-year-old client as an elderly man who lives in an extremely rural area, said Monahan walked onto his wraparound deck and spotted a motorcycle and two sport utility vehicles that appeared to block any possible escape. He said Monahan fired one warning shot to scare away the vehicles, then stumbled and, quote, bangs the gun and it goes off. And I'm curious with that because, well, first of all, 66 is not elderly, in my opinion. It is still middle-aged. However, what's interesting to me is that he claims that he spotted a motorcycle in addition to two sport utility vehicles, which there wasn't a motorcycle. I mean, maybe he thought there might be, but again, you know, his story changed a lot. Oops. He said Monahan later learned the second shot struck Gillis of Schuylerville. The first-floor courtroom of Michelini was crowded with more than 50 observers, including Gillis's family, media, and court employees. Monahan faces 25 years to life in state prison if convicted of second-degree murder, reckless endangerment, and tampering with evidence. And as his trial got underway, he faced another obstacle, the testimony of his wife for the prosecution. First Assistant DA Christian P. Morris revealed in his opening statement the upcoming testimony of Jinx Monahan. The wife would testify later Thursday afternoon that on the night of April 15th, she went to bed at about 8:35 p.m. She said her husband woke her up, said there was a motorcycle and other vehicles in the driveway and to get away from the window. She hid in a closet, she said. Speaking in a nearly inaudible, low voice, Jinx Monahan testified that she saw her husband grab a shotgun he keeps by their bed and walk downstairs. She heard the door open to their wraparound porch, then gunfire. I heard a shot. After that, I heard one more shot, she testified. She said her husband walked back upstairs and returned the gun. They both sat on the bed, she said, then spoke at the kitchen table. He didn't tell you he shot the gun? Morris asked the defendant's wife. I don't recall that, she answered. Her testimony was to continue on Friday, which is today. Earlier, Morris told jurors that on April 15th, Gillis had been at the home of her boyfriend, Blake Walsh, in Cambridge, hanging out with other friends in their late teens and early 20s. After being invited to the home of another friend who lived about 35 miles away, the group got in 3 vehicles. Okay, so I stand corrected. 1 on a motorcycle, 2 others, including Gillis and her boyfriend, in SUVs, Morris told jurors. When the friends arrived at what they thought was their friend's home at about 9:45 p.m., the Patterson Hill Road home had no lights on and appeared abandoned. The driveway was long and on a sharp hill. Believing nobody was home and that they were in the wrong place, they converged to talk. The friend on the motorcycle drove closer to the home to turn around. So that I was mistaken. And this article seems to be telling the story that the video was telling. So I feel like we'll stick with the article and skip the live opening statements. But I did put links in the description if you should want to watch them on your own. Hey, Lisa. Dinner break. Well, I had some issues with YouTube copyright bots. So that's why I'm a little late. We had some issues, and then, it happens. So Cabre says, if he fired a warning, then at cars doesn't make sense unless his warning was at them also, which isn't a warning, in my opinion. Right. I agree. Hey, Cocoa Puff. Then, in a space of less than 3 minutes, Monahan emerged from his home and fired the shots, one of which hit Gillis in the neck, according to Morris. Morris noted the prosecutors do not accuse Monahan of intentionally murdering Gillis. Instead, he said, Monahan showed a reckless disregard and depraved indifference to human life when he fired the shots. This is what the evidence will show, that a man came out onto his porch, fired a rifle under circumstances that he was aware somebody could be killed, disregarded it, and did it anyway. This is a case about someone who recklessly caused the death of another person with a depraved indifference to human life. Morris said Monahan showed no signs of nervousness, a shaky voice, or difficulty searching for words. He said Monahan was, quote, calm, cool, and collected when he spoke with a 911 operator to whom he said Monahan supplied false information. He said the friends, after realizing Gillis was shot, could not successfully call 911 due to a lack of cell phone service until they reached Salem. Emergency workers treated Gillis but could not save the young woman. Morris told jurors Monahan was 23 feet above Gillis and her friends in the Ford Explorer and some 30 yards away. He said the first shot led 2 people in the Explorer to believe it struck a rear bumper. 5 seconds later, he said, another shot entered the SUV from the rear and struck Gillis. Her friends needed to use the flashlights on their cell phones to discover in the dark vehicle that she had been hit. The prosecutor said Monahan later covered up the crime by eliminating DNA evidence from the shotgun. After the shooting, Monahan called 911 and asked if police had people at his property. Monahan reportedly told the operator, I wish they would get out of my yard so I can go back to bed. Okay, so he did call 911. I did not realize that. And he asked if police had people at his property. One of the first witnesses, 911 operator Kelsey Carpenter, testified about her exchanges with Monahan in multiple calls. At one point, Monahan suggested hunters might be in the area. He said he was asleep and had not heard anything. Police, meanwhile, were trying to get Monahan to leave his home. So initially, he said he was asleep and didn't hear anything. But then he said he saw a motorcycle and 2 SUVs. And he also heard the motorcycle. What's going on? He asked Carpenter. I'll have to call you back. Monahan suggested an officer at his property had, quote, something on his mind. I don't know what. Kevin, I need you to talk to me, please, the 911 operator said. Oh, and that was the end of the article. That kind of was... That ended abruptly. Okay, so that gave a sense of what was said. And so we're going to go back to a few videos. But again, I am not going to show the actual opening statements because I don't want to get botted again, copyright botted. Yeah, Lisa, I'm not sure. I don't remember hearing anything about trail cams. I have to go back because I covered it back in April when this first happened. And I should have watched my live about it before going live today. I just didn't have time. So I will definitely go back and revisit that and hopefully find a way to play the opening arguments without getting copyright botted. Yeah, that's true. I was thinking that, Pookie, I could put an overlay over it and just play the audio. Yep.
The first day of testimony has wrapped up in the trial of Kevin Monahan. He's accused of shooting and killing 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis back in April. Prosecutors are trying to prove that Monahan acted with depraved indifference that night, while his attorneys claim it was an accident because of a defective gun. Mark Mulholland joins us live from the Washington County Courthouse right now. And Mark, you were there all day for this.
Yes, Rachel, good evening. Before the first witness took the stand this afternoon, the prosecution laid out the evidence and the timeline. The jurors...
And so again, this news clip was from yesterday, which is when opening statements were given. It was not Law and Crime. It was not Law and Crime Cocoa Puff. It was a local news station, WRGB Channel 6. I did also find the court feed on a different news station, but if I do play it, I'm going to run it through copyright checks first. And then based on that, I'll do a live with maybe next week when they have more information. I can play the opening statements.
Would hear presented over the next couple of weeks in this case. Then the defense came with a new explanation for how exactly that fatal shot was fired on Saturday, April 15th.
I wish they'd get out of my yard so I can go back to bed.
Those, according to prosecutor Christian Morris, were the words of Kevin Monahan to a 911 operator on the night of April 15th, 2023, about the police in his driveway.
And so again, this view of the driveway is when you come around the curve. So if we go back to the map, so again, this is, and I don't know what this box is here. I don't know how to get rid of that. But this was Patterson Hill Road, and then his driveway starts, and then it goes up. And so the view that the news clip is showing at this point is this curve. So they had already, driven up this part, and then there's a curve. And then the house is here.
After he shot and killed Kaylin Gillis.
This trial is about murder in the second degree, reckless endangerment in the first degree, and tampering with evidence. And the evidence in this case is going to be beyond a reasonable doubt that Kevin Monahan is guilty of all those.
And actually, this is a good place to pause because it does have a tiny sign that says private drive. But again, I don't know. Hopefully it'll pan out a little bit. I don't know if that sign was at the bottom of the driveway where it met the main road, or if that's up more where that garage or outbuilding was.
And there's one witness on the prosecution's list who we'll hear from for the first time.
You're going to hear.
Okay, so there were signs. Let me just go back. So again, I'm not sure exactly where this sign is, but it does look like it's somewhat covered by shrubs.
List who we'll hear from for the first time.
You're going to hear from Jinx Monahan. Jinx Monahan is Kevin Monahan's wife.
Morris says Jinx Monahan was awakened by her husband telling her there was a motorcycle in the driveway. She's expected to testify that Monahan grabbed his shotgun and went outside.
And while out.
Okay, and based on that view we just saw, I would assume that the private drive, the little sign, was at the bottom of the driveway.
Outside, she heard 2 gunshots.
Morris says the couple went back inside and sat at their kitchen table.
They sat there for some 20 to 25 minutes.
And so this view actually, so I would also assume, and I'm sure we'll get more information as testimony is given, but the first vehicle had stopped prior to the house because they had seen no lights on. The second vehicle had actually continued driving to turn around, and then it was also said that the person on the motorcycle went up to turn around as well.
When the car comes up their driveway and puts a spotlight on their house.
Police had arrived at the Monahan home. Prosecutors say after some back and forth, Monahan called 911 himself.
He says several times, I was sound asleep. I'm an old man.
The defense takes a much different view.
This was a terrible accident. Somebody should have realized that by now.
Instead of repeating Monahan's claims that he was a...
Yes, Lisa. So the one article that I just read, the prosecution said he fired a rifle. So that's what was said in court yesterday.
Sleep, and there are hunters in the area all the time. Defense attorney Arthur Frost introduces this new explanation.
This gun is defective. It's broken.
The gun is defective. It is broken. Well, if the gun is broken, why would someone use it? That's my question.
It malfunctions. It will shoot even when no one pulls the trigger.
And so again, this is a good summary of what happened in court today or yesterday. So again, this is about where we had been talking about, you know, he's saying that the gun shot itself because it was broken, because it malfunctioned.
Frost says a New York State police employee will testify about this. He describes Monahan as a scared old man who thought someone was going to break into his house.
You will have to decide to act with an evilness, a wickedness, a wantonness, a heinous disregard for the value of human life. Or...
And I just realized, I wonder why Mr. Monahan is sitting at the end of the table. So the prosecution is able to get 2 people at the table, yet Mr. Monahan is seated way at the end, unless there is another person there. I can't really tell.
Was he a dumb, scared old man with a defective gun?
Did he just say he was a dumb old man? Hold on.
A defective gun.
The defective gun theory coming out today during opening statements from defense attorney Arthur Frost. We bring in our own legal expert now, attorney Paul Darrow-Hanessian. This is new. This was new today. Arthur Frost had told us that it was an accident, and now we know the theory behind the accident. What do you make of this coming out in opening statements today?
So they're saying it was an accident because the gun was broken, that it malfunctioned.
It was also knew that it was the state police that gave him the best information, namely that the gun misfired or accidentally fired while it was being examined by the state police. So that's clearly going to be the heart of the defense in this case. The question will be, and the prosecution was hinting at this, how does it square with what the defendant said and did right after this incident?
And the jury heard from—
And I agree with that, because if the gun malfunctioned or it was an accident, why would you come up with different stories every time you were questioned?
From some of what Kevin Monahan said to a 911 dispatcher on the night of April 15th. And that doesn't seem to square with this theory, because there was no mention of a gun being fired at all in conversations, a 10-minute conversation with the 911 dispatcher.
Correct. And you can expect to see the prosecution really hone in on that, because so much of this is going to be the defendant's state of mind and whether that rises to the element of a depraved indifference murder charge.
As we reported a little earlier, Jinx Monahan, the wife of Kevin Monahan, is on the stand as a prosecution witness now. There are limitations to what she can be compelled to say, are there not?
Definitely, and that's what the objection that the judge...
And so we are going to get into what happened today in regards to Jinx Monahan, who is Kevin's wife. She has been deemed a hostile witness, and so we'll get into that after this video.
Judge is dealing with right now, the communication between her and her husband. Generally, that's privilege. The question will be, are there any exceptions to that privilege rule of communications, such as concealing acts or actions, tampering with evidence, participating in the fruits of the crime? And in this case, we know there is a tampering evidence charge, and the judge may be looking to see whether any exceptions apply.
Okay, so we're going to go to... And actually, I did see... Give me 1 second. I did see on that last video, I don't think I saw... They had shown a video about... the wife testifying, and I don't remember seeing that, so that might be a new video. Oh, 39 minutes ago. All right, so maybe it's good that we had some technological issues. So we're going to get into... I'm actually going to show this one next. So this was from 39 minutes ago. And again, accused killer's wife testifies in driveway shooting trial.
A surprising moment on this day 2 of testimony in the driveway shooting trial. While Kevin Monahan's wife was on the stand, Mark Mulholland continues our team coverage of this trial live from the Washington County Courthouse. Good evening to you, Mark.
Well, good evening, Sabrina. The first week of the Kevin Monahan trial is now in the books. Testimony wrapped up here at about 90 minutes ago, and we've heard from roughly 10 witnesses so far.
Oh, wow. So this video was from about 8 p.m. So they actually held court until about 6:30 in the afternoon.
But none have been on the stand as long as the wife of the defendant, Jinx Monahan. Other than the teens who are with Kaylin Gillis, she is the only other person who truly knows what happened on that Saturday night in April. She was called as a prosecution witness, but prosecutors got permission from the judge to treat her as hostile.
And I am going to pause there to go to an article that I have in regards to that. So this is, again, from the Times-Union, and this is from today. Judge says wife of Kevin Monahan can be treated as a hostile witness. Washington County prosecutor asked to treat Jinx Monahan like a hostile witness after she gave, quote, very rehearsed answers at husband's trial in fatal driveway shooting. A Washington County judge allowed a prosecutor to treat the wife of driveway murder defendant Kevin Monahan as a hostile witness Friday after she gave testimony the prosecutor said appeared to contain very rehearsed answers favoring her husband. Judge Adam Michelini granted the request, saying Jinx Monahan was clearly trying to portray her husband in a more favorable light than she had in her prior statements and grand jury testimony. Her fears were greatly exaggerated, the judge said, speaking to parties outside the jury's presence. She repeatedly said that Mr. Monahan was her protector. She's never said anything like that before. Michelini said those remarks damaged the prosecution's case against Monahan, 66, the man charged with fatally shooting Kaylin Gillis, 20, of Schuylerville on the night of April 15th after she and her friends accidentally drove their 3 vehicles up Monahan's driveway. The judge said it also spoke volumes that Monahan's wife had agreed to meet with the defense, but not with the first assistant district attorney, Christian P. Morris, last month. He said Jinx Monahan was, quote, way more open, way more expansive when being questioned by her husband's attorney, Arthur Frost, than by the prosecutor. Frost had argued that Jinx Monahan, whom he called a slight and elderly woman, was intimidated being questioned by Morris, a large man. The judge was unmoved. It seemed like the slightness and elderly nature kind of turn on and off depending on when she wants them to. Kevin Monahan is charged with second-degree murder, reckless endangerment, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors allege he displayed a depraved indifference to human life April 15th when he twice fired a shotgun at vehicles outside his home on Patterson Hill Road in rural Hebron. He faces 25 years to life if convicted of the murder charge. Excuse me. Monahan's wife testified that she and her husband have been together since 1975 and married in 1987. She said her husband, a builder, used to race motorcycles professionally on a national level and that she also raced. She broke into tears when recalling how both of them were put in handcuffs the night of the shooting. Frost contends his client, whom he called a scared old man, heard the revved-up motorcycle of one of Gillis's friends outside the house and mistakenly believed the group of young adults and teenagers who were looking for the home of a friend were bikers threatening to come inside. Frost said Monahan walked onto his porch and accidentally discharged a malfunctioning shotgun that can fire without its trigger being pulled. Morris, who first called Jinx Monahan to the stand on Thursday, resumed his questioning Friday morning. She said that on the night of April 15th, her husband woke her up to tell her that a motorcycle and other vehicles were outside. She said her husband asked her to stay away from the windows, grabbed the shotgun by his bed, and walked outside. She said she heard 2 gunshots before her husband returned to the house and that they spoke in bed and at a kitchen table. A prosecutor can ask leading questions to a hostile witness and attempt to impeach them by using their prior statements, something typically allowed only under cross-examination. Only after Morris confronted Jinx Monahan with her prior testimony before a grand jury did she testify that her husband never told her he had fired a gun. She testified that she heard the motorcycle sounds and believed the couple's house was being invaded. I was afraid. I was petrified, she testified, noting that she had hidden in a closet. Morris later told the judge that Jinx Monahan's lawyer, Michael McCure, had said that one of Monahan's attorneys asked him to tell her that she did not need to meet with Morris last month. Morris asked to treat Jinx Monahan as a hostile witness, saying she gave, quote, what seems to be very rehearsed answers. That's just my opinion. Morris, after receiving approval to treat her as a hostile witness, asked Jinx Monahan, were you not aware of how many vehicles were in your driveway? Scratch that. You were not aware of how many vehicles were in your driveway, were you? No, she responded. On Friday afternoon, Scott Smith, an attorney who lives near the Monahan house, testified that on the night of the shooting, he and his wife were outside when they spotted the 2 SUVs and motorcycle traveling up toward the Monahan home. He estimated the vehicles moved at a moderate speed, about 25 miles per hour, and were slowing down. "Did you hear the motorcyclist?" Morris asked. "Not really. It was relatively quiet as motorcycles go," Smith told Morris. He said he heard one pop and then a second. The vehicles turned around in reverse order to how they arrived and left the property toward Route 30. He said they were moving fast and that the last vehicle was honking its horn. "Initially, I was confused," Smith testified. "We weren't sure what we had just seen." The entire episode took less than 5 minutes. He began to call 911, but then decided against it. A neighbor then called and asked if he and his wife had heard the shots. Smith said he told his wife the time was 9:50 p.m. and added, "Let's try and remember that. It could be important." Under cross-examination, Frost asked Smith if he ever gave police an estimate of the vehicle of the speed. Smith said no. Village of Granville police officer Mark Nelson, a retired Saratoga County Sheriff's deputy, testified that Monahan's house was, quote, completely dark when he and his partner arrived to respond to the shooting. Eventually, he said, Monahan emerged but did not come down when police asked him to speak to them. Nelson said he eventually tricked Monahan by telling him police were there for a noise complaint. "Noise complaint? There's hunters and dogs here all the time," Monahan replied, according to Nelson. Under cross-examination, Frost pressed Nelson to admit he lied to Monahan. The officer admitted he did as a tactic to de-escalate the situation. Cambridge Greenwich police officer Jason Nussbaum testified that Monahan repeatedly refused to come down from his house and to speak to police. He said Monahan asked the police to come up to him, which did not happen until several more officers, including an undersheriff, arrived. Washington County Court will be closed on Monday. The trial resumes Tuesday morning. Right, K-Brace thought she was in the closet. Yes, Sinner, I'm wondering too why she didn't claim spousal immunity. That's a good question, actually.
These are photos of Jinx Monahan turning away from the camera just minutes after testifying in the murder trial of her husband. Mrs. Monahan was inside the home she shares with her husband the night Caitlin Gillis was shot and killed. Called as a prosecution witness, Jinx appeared to have trouble answering questions asked to her by the prosecutor. She would say, "I don't recall." But when she was questioned by her husband...
Oh, so that's interesting. So when the prosecution was asking her question, she said, "I don't recall. I don't recall." But when the defense asked her questions, she knew all the answers.
Husband's attorney, she seemed to have clearer recollection about the motorcycle and cars that had driven up her driveway.
Okay, so here's the sign. Okay, so I'm glad they showed this. So this looks like it's at the end, like at the bottom of the driveway. So on the left, let me get my cat. So right above my cat is the private drive sign. And then on the right, there is this that says do not enter. But again, I don't know if that do not enter was there at the time. We do know that the private drive sign was there, but that is very small. And if it's pitch black at night, I'm not sure I would, personally, I don't know if I would see that myself.
Driveway that Saturday night in April. I was petrified. We were being invaded. I didn't know what to do. Some things I remember and some I don't. Because you were so scared, the attorney...
And isn't that leading? I'm wondering if there was an objection to that question because, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but that to me is a leading question. Because you were so scared? Yes.
Attorney asks, yes. Mrs. Monahan testified that they both keep guns in their bedroom, but she was hiding in the closet and didn't see what her husband was doing outside. When Attorney Frost asked her why she didn't call 911, she said, "Kevin was protecting me. I didn't think I needed to." Jinx Monahan also testified that she was frightened because there'd been a break-in years earlier in the area, and an
Okay, so there was a break-in earlier. I could understand that. I mean, they live in, you know, pretty much the middle of nowhere. There's not a lot of, you know, I mean, they have neighbors, but it's not, you know, very populated. So I could see being, you know, afraid. Yet now she did say she was in the closet, but then she wasn't in the closet.
elderly couple was beaten. After Frost finished with his questions, ADA Morris asked to treat Mrs. Monahan as a hostile witness, claiming she was being more helpful in her responses to the defense, saying she's affirmatively damaging the people's case. Morris accused Monahan of giving very rehearsed answers. Judge Adam Nicolini agreed, saying Jinx Monahan seems to be able to turn on and off her demeanor as a meek old woman. He compared her grand jury testimony to her answers today. He said her fears were greatly exaggerated. She repeatedly said Mr. Monahan was her protector. She never said anything like that before.
And that's interesting that in all of the, you know, interviews, her grand jury testimony, she never said he was my protector. He was protecting me. Yet, you know, today he was.
Judge agreed to allow prosecutors to treat her as hostile, and she testified that she met with the defense team to prepare for trial.
And I'm wondering, so again, the news article had said, or the newspaper article had said that they had, you know, it wasn't in the presence of the jury, but I'm wondering as a juror if they saw a shift in the way that the questions were being asked. And also the fact that her answers were now changing. I feel like if I was a juror and the prosecution was asking a witness questions and they kept saying, I don't recall, I don't remember, I don't recall, I don't remember. And then the defense, you know, starts asking their questions and now they're just a wealth of knowledge. I feel personally that I would be like, something's weird. So maybe that was a tactic by the defense, but it's my opinion that it may not have worked the way they wanted it to.
But would not meet with prosecutors. ADA Morris asked her how often her husband used his shotgun. She said maybe a couple of times a year to shoot woodchucks, gray squirrels, nuisance animals.
Okay. So he only used his gun to shoot nuisance animals. So why in this instance would he believe, or she believe, because these were her words, that they were being invaded? It's bizarre. Very bizarre.
Now, Monahan was soft-spoken, and it was difficult to hear her at times, but some in the courtroom thought she said nuisance vehicles and not nuisance animals. Either way, that was an apparent slip of the tongue here today. So it began.
Oh, an apparent slip of the tongue. So that'll be interesting once the trial's over to get the transcripts to see what the court reporter heard, because the court reporter is right next to the witnesses. So interesting that some people thought she said nuisance vehicles, but instead she said animals instead. It's interesting.
And with the wife of the murder defendant on the stand this morning, and ended for the week with testimony from police who responded to the scene of the fatal shooting. Reporter Dan Levy was in the courtroom listening to testimony this afternoon, and he's here to tell us what he heard. Dan,
all the testimony we've heard so far, of course, is from the prosecution witnesses, you know, the police, the EMTs, the dispatchers, and the neighbors. Of course, the district.
So they actually got through a lot of witnesses today. So I'm wondering, I'm guessing on Tuesday, because that's when court resumes, I would assume that that would be when Kaylin's friends are questioned and take the stand. And I'm wondering if the prosecution has any expert witnesses, because that would be interesting as well.
District attorney is trying to build a case, lay a foundation so that he can convince the jury one way or another whether or not Kevin Monahan should be determined to be guilty or not guilty. Before the cars and a motorcycle mistakenly headed up the wrong driveway of Kevin Monahan's back on April 15th, the Monahans say they were asleep. But just before 10 o'clock that night, the commotion caused by young people forced the Monahans from their early bedtime. According to authorities, Kevin Monahan then walked out onto his wraparound porch and fired 2 blasts from a shotgun, which killed Kaylin Gillis. After the shooting, Jinx Monahan testified, Kevin and I were sitting on the bed talking. I think he comforted me, told me everything was okay. I didn't go back to bed. I was too upset. I just sat there to ponder what's going on. At the time, the Monahans say they had no way of knowing who had been in their driveway or even if anyone had been hit. When asked by her husband's attorney, Arthur Frost, why she hadn't called 911, Jinx Monahan answered, because Kevin protects me.
That's a very strange answer. Why didn't you call 911? Because my husband protects me. I don't know. I just find that very strange. A very strange answer.
By her husband's attorney, Arthur Frost, why she hadn't called 911, Jinx Monahan answered, because Kevin protects me. Later that evening, when the small car caravan had pulled to the side of Cemetery Road 6 miles away, paramedic Peter Simino arrived on a very difficult scene. Kaylin Gillis was lying lifeless in the road. It was told to us that this patient had received a gunshot wound to the neck. He testified, we found 2 significant wounds, one on the front lower side of her neck, consistent with a gunshot wound, and another on the left side of her neck. There was no cardiac activity. There was also a massive amount of blood loss. We decided at that point not to perform any additional life-saving measures.
And that's so sad. And I wonder, I mean, it may not have changed anything, but if that neighbor that said they thought about calling 911 but didn't, if that would have changed anything. And not so much in respect to Kaylin, but in respect to the evidence that had allegedly been gotten rid of. So, or tampered with, for that matter. It makes me wonder.
After a long holiday weekend, we expect this trial to resume next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. And Mark, next week, of course, we expect to hear from the kids who were with Kaylin on that fateful night, including that grief-stricken boyfriend.
Yeah, Blake Walsh is his name. Dan Levy, thank you very much. 10 or 11 witnesses called so far. Prosecutors say probably as many as 36 witnesses will be called. We'll find out. There's also the possibility that Jinx Monahan could be called as a witness for the defense. However, that would open up, it could be risky, as she would be able to be cross-examined by the prosecution. Much more next week, beginning Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Reporting live in Fort Edward, Mark Mulholland, News Channel 13. Sabrina, back to you.
Mark and Dan, thank you for keeping us up.
All right. So that was very interesting. So I do just have one more clip that we'll watch, and then we'll wrap this up. And this was actually an earlier news clip from the same News Channel 13, and so that may be a little bit repetitive, but
start with the driveway shooting trial. It is day 2 of testimony, and Mark Mulholland is at the Washington County Court once again following the developments every step of the way. And Mark, really, the headline so far today appears to be Kevin Monahan's wife testifying for the second time today in court.
Yeah, good afternoon, Sabrina. Yeah, we're on the second floor of the Washington County Courthouse above the courtroom where testimony is being heard right now. And Jinx Monahan, so far the star witness for the prosecution here. You see her here. This is a photo I snapped in the courtroom, in the courthouse, just outside the courtroom, as she got off the stand here late this morning, early this afternoon, where she was treated as a hostile witness. She was called as a witness for the prosecution in this case. Keep in mind, yes, she's the wife, non-estranged wife of Kevin Monahan, but she was called as a prosecution witness. And it turns out, it seems the judge felt and the district attorney felt that she was being more cooperative with the defense than she was the prosecution. She often said, when asked questions by Assistant District Attorney Christian Morris, "I don't recall," answered very softly, not forcefully, not with any.
And that's interesting. So, like, he had said in the last clip, this reporter had said she was soft-spoken when she said nuisance animals, but then others thought she said nuisance vehicles. So being, you know, meek or quiet when it was the prosecution, but when it was the defense, more forthcoming, you know, more vocal where people could hear what she was saying, more confident because they were rehearsed possibly. So very, very interesting how different.
Conviction or confidence. So the prosecutor, Morris, raised that to the judge and asked for permission to treat her as a, quote, hostile witness. And
Lisa, that's a really good point. Again, if these people really were wanting to keep people off their property, they made no effort to secure it. And I would think, you know, even a fence or, you know, a gate where that, like that garage was, or even at the bottom of the driveway where people would know, like, it's not a road, it's an actual driveway and not, you know, I mean, that makes sense if they were that afraid.
And the judge agreed. The judge agreed that she seemed to be answering more forcefully, more effusively to the defense than the prosecution, when in fact she was called as a prosecution witness. We also learned through testimony and court conferences that she did not appear, she did not meet with the prosecution in advance to discuss her testimony, as is customary for witnesses who are about to testify at a trial. However, Jinx Monahan, Kevin Monahan's wife, did meet with the defense to discuss her testimony.
So a lot of this, Mark, was centered around how she was speaking and the words she chose while being while testifying for the prosecution today. Yeah,
and in particular, there was a lot of testimony about how fearful she was on that night, how fearful about the revving motorcycle engine and the cars in the driveway. She said that she felt like they were being invaded, but that was only.
But so I'm going to have to look back because I feel like in the first live I did, that she said her husband woke her up and said that there were vehicles in the driveway. So now she's saying that she heard them. So this is where I'm definitely going to look back, because now I'm getting mixed up with what her, quote, testimony is. Because she said her husband woke her up and then she went to hide in the closet. Well, now she's saying she heard them and thought they were being invaded. It's not making sense to me.
Testimony that was elicited by the defense, not the prosecution. So that, of course, is more helpful to the defense, so as they try to convey that the Monahans were in fear for their lives that night.
And we're seeing video of the Monahan home and now Kevin Monahan himself in court. Did she say anything, Mark, that allowed us to understand a little bit more about what happened that night, the night that Kevin Monahan is accused of firing the shotgun that ultimately killed Kaylin Gillis?
We don't, the testimony doesn't provide a lot of insight, because she claims that she was hiding in a closet, so wasn't able to see her husband as he left and went outside of the home, standing on the deck of the home. So she wasn't able to see him because she was in a closet, presumably with the door closed, and wasn't able to see him. She was able to hear things, though, she said. She heard one gunshot and then a second gunshot. And she testified that when her husband came in, they talked about things, but they didn't talk about where the shots came from. So there was never any.
So that's just bizarre to me. Like, you hear gunshots and you don't say, oh my God, I heard gunshots. Like, what's going on? I mean, that's what I would do. I don't know. It just seems very suspicious. And Lisa, to answer your question, did the prosecution go through her statements on cross to catch her discrepancies? I would assume yes. I have not seen video footage of the actual witnesses on the stand. I've only seen the video of the opening statements from the prosecution and defense. So it could be that they were only allowing that to be publicly available and not witness testimony. But that is a good question. And that's where I think those transcripts would be really helpful.
Testimony about where the shots came from or whether or not Kevin Monahan was the one who was firing the shots.
This is just day 2 of testimony in the.
Right. And you would think if you hear gunshots, and this is on, I'm now, devil's advocate for Mr. Monahan. If he didn't fire the gunshots, it's my opinion that he would be like, oh my God, they shot at me. I wasn't doing anything. Like, what the heck? We need to call 911. That's what I would do. But yet they didn't discuss it at all about where the shots came from. I find that really hard to believe.
This trial, essentially the first full day that we're having of testimony, given that opening statements happened for the first part of yesterday. So I know testimony is continuing right now, and our colleague Dan Levy is inside the courtroom, and you'll be back in there as well, providing our team coverage once again from there.
I will. We'll see you live at 4.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us here.
All right, so that is what I have for you. I am going to look for some more things. Definitely going to take a look at my earlier live from April, because it has been some time. It's been almost a year. Exactly, K-Braze. They just went and sat at a table and talked about nothing, then went to bed after being told to go in a closet with him and hearing shots. I know. They talked about it. So what did they talk about? Did they talk about getting their narratives on the same page? Did they talk about calling 911 because they could have hurt someone? Did they just sit at the kitchen table and say they talked but said nothing? So it's, it's very, to me at this point, it's very suspicious. But I am interested to hear from Kaylin's friends, because I believe that that's going to be the most impactful, emotional, just the juror. I feel like that's what people need to hear, because I believe the wife is trying to protect her husband, which, I don't fault her for that. But at the same time, she's lying under oath. And I don't think it was a very good idea if she was coached in that way. I don't believe it helped the defense at all. Because, the jurors are smart people. They were chosen for a reason. And if we can see it as just outsiders looking at snippets, I feel, reading snippets and, getting that information from those that are able to be inside the courtroom, there's something not right. So, again, innocent until proven guilty. However, based on what I've heard today, And what initially had been reported by law enforcement, as well as the DA and the defense, it's a little bit suspicious. It's a little bit suspicious. Right, Lisa. It's definitely a weird one. Like the motive other than just being a hateful person, or just, I mean, maybe things were going on, or they thought, maybe they did think that someone was up to no good, and you know, there was a whole group of them. But what really struck me is that the shot came from behind. So the gunshot entered the car from behind and it hit Kaylin. So the threat is no longer, and it's my opinion, when the threat is moving away from you, they are no longer a threat. And I think, to me, that would be a detail that really stuck in my brain, that the shot went through the back of the car, not the front of the car. It went through as they were leaving, not coming. K-Bray's good question. I would like to know how far from the house to the car, because gunshots are not made for long distances. And that's why I am going to watch the opening statements myself, just so that I can get some more information. I thought we would be able to watch it together and discuss, but you know, the YouTube copyright bots had to rain on my parade. So with that being said, I am going to say goodbye for tonight. My throat is, I think allergies are bothering me. My glands are super swollen. My throat's a little scratchy. So I am going to say goodbye. Let's see, tomorrow, 5:30 Eastern time, Sinner and I will be live on our channel. So definitely, if one of my mods can drop our link, that would be fantastic. So yes, we will be back tomorrow, because some people have been counting the days since we've been gone, which is another story. So I hope you all have a great rest of your night. And if I don't see you on these streets of YouTube, I will see you on the flip side.